Hey everyone, David Morrison back with another Tennessee basketball preview. As this time we are going to talk about the 2025-2026 Tennessee Lady Volunteers. Uh, this year's Lady Vols team, a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. We kind of saw a glimpse of it last year, and excited to talk about this year's team. Let's go ahead and kind of rewind last season before we dive into this year's team. So, uh, Kim Caldwell enters her second season for the Lady Volunteers, and it definitely was a huge first year for Kim Caldwell professionally and personally. Obviously, taking a new head coaching job at a prestigious women's basketball program like Tennessee. Uh, there was, like I said, trying to figure out who Kim Caldwell was as a person. And I thought Lady Vol Nation welcomed her with open arms, I should say. And, definitely a lot of changes in her life personally, too, with becoming a first time mom, welcoming a baby boy at the beginning of 2025. So, definitely a first year coaching and really just 2025 in general that she'll never forget the rest of her life. But, the Lady Vols finished 24-10 last year under Coach Caldwell's first season, 8-8 in SEC play before bowing out in the Sweet 16. As I kind of mentioned a little bit in this video just now, it's a very exciting brand of basketball. It definitely was different than what we are accustomed to, even with Pat Summit, although there are some similarities. What Pat Summit brought that Kim Caldwell is bringing back, just hard work, toughness, you know, being there on every play, every possession matters, every rebound, every shot. And, we see some of those traits that Kim Caldwell, like I said, is really brought back. And it's very exciting. And I think the fan base is starting to notice that. And, I'm expecting to see the next step in the Lady Vols returning back to championship level. Definitely the foundation was laid last year. There was some good moments, some great wins. The Yukon win was huge last year. Uh, that was right after Kim Caldwell got back from a brief maternity leave, if you will. And it was a big statement win for her. She needed to get that to have the Lady Vol Nation to trust her to be a serious coach. And I think in ways they did, treat her with respect. But for the most part, you want to have that signature win to fire up that fan base. And like I said, the Lady Vol fan base has not gone away, even with, after Coach Summit's passing and we went through Holly Warwick and Kelly Harper, the Lady Vol Nation's always been there. It's just, the sizzle or the spark has really went away. And I think we're about to relight that spark up here in 2025, 2026. So that's kind of a recap. Let's go ahead and kind of just talk about this year's team. Uh, Tennessee preseason picked number 4 in the media. So that's a huge jump from last year. We were like mid SEC pack last year, and now already a top 4 team in the SEC and a very deep league with women's basketball, especially, excuse me, 2 teams that reached the Final Four last year. And we'll dive in a little bit into the schedule as we go on. So let's talk about the departures for the Lady Vols. I believe there was 9 departures from last year's team, if I'm counting correctly. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, 5 of them, excuse me, ended up graduating. So, Jewel Spears, Sarah Puckett, Samara Spencer, Tess Darby, Holland Shed all graduated. So we wish them the best in their future, wherever that takes them. Uh, Unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to Edie Darby. She suffered a serious foot injury, and unfortunately had to retire from playing college basketball. But it's not a tragic story, as she announced that she's going to stay at the University of Tennessee and pursue her doctorate. So that's in congratulations to Edie. Uh, finding life outside of basketball. So there's a silver lining, and I wish her the best. I think she's going to do great in the medical field uh, down the road. Three Lady Vols did transferred. Avery Strickland now heads to Belmont. We wish her well. Destiny Wells to UT Martin. And we're actually going to see Strickland and Wells come back to Thompson Bowling Arena, since those are two teams that Lady Vols have on the schedule. And Ajadeli is heading to Grand Canyon. So wish these all the best in their future endeavors. So that's a look at the departures. That's a lot leaving, but as we talk about the players returning and definitely the incoming freshmen, now we're starting to see Kim Caldwell's Lady Vols team take place. And to me, the theme for this roster, as I'm looking at it, is, welcome to Kim Caldwell Lady Vol basketball. All right, so let's talk about the returning players. For the Lady Volunteers, Talisha Cooper returns back. She is the returning scorer from last year, averaging 16 points per game, shot 44% from the field, 5 rebounds. She's probably going to be, I would say definitely the main focal point on this team next year. We saw obviously a lot of rotation, 5 in, 5 out from Kim Caldwell, which is definitely different from, even when Pat Summitt was there. You don't have a 8-player rotation, 10-player rotation. I mean, I guess you do, but it's not a mass substitution like we see. So it's definitely different, but it keeps fresh bodies out on the court. So, but I think Cooper will once again lead the team in scoring going down the stretch. Z Spearman's back. Ruby Whitehorn's back. Both average 11 points per game. Spearman, the most consistent shooter from last year's team, averaged over 51% from the field. So, if she continues that up, I mean, that's looking at all SEC level there, if she can still have a high field goal percentage. Of course, the Lady Vols shoot a lot of threes from their players, and, very up-tempo offense. So kind of like I talked about with the guys, the guys shoot a lot of threes themselves, so you kind of have to hold your breath whenever they're knocking down these threes, because you're going to see a lot of misses, but, hopefully there'll be some reward in the end. Also returning back, Kaya Wynn, Kanaya Boyd, Alicia Latham. So you do have some veterans returned back, some leadership for a lot of these incoming freshmen, and, of course, these transfers. So always good to have that. And it also, it kind of works both ways for Kim Caldwell to trust these players to not only be leaders on the court, but just they trust her style of play. And at the same time, of course, these players could just say, I can't handle this. I'm going to hit the transfer portal or whatever. This does. These players do have Kim Caldwell's trust going forward. All right, let's talk about some of the new Lady Vols that have arrived on campus. Tennessee picked up 3 players in the transfer portal, some really good players. We start with Janiah Barker, senior, played on UCLA's Final Four team last year. So a huge pickup for Kim Caldwell. Once again, to balance out this offensive attack and defensive attack for them. So she brings some championship pedigree from UCLA last year, or at least some notorieties, prestige, if you will. So this is a huge pickup, in my opinion. Tennessee was trying to swing for the fences on another player, and we'll talk about her when we preview South Carolina, that they're really going after, but didn't land her. But they ended up picking up Barker, and I think a huge pickup, and I think she's going to be a major asset on this team. Nia Robinson transfers in from SMU. Uh, looking at her stats, pretty solid player. Be interesting to see where she kind of fits um, into this team. And of course, the Lady Vols put out a cute video, I guess a month ago, of the running gag or joke of players' name Naya. You got Kanaya, you got Naya, you got Maya, and then at the end of the video, Lauren Hurst just goes, "I'm Lauren." So it's a pretty funny, humorous video. Check it out. It's posted on Lady Ball's social media page, but pretty humorous. Uh, Jersey Wolfenbarger, the next one to transfer in from LSU, also played at Arkansas, so she's played a lot of SEC ball in her college career. And of course, played for Kim Mulkey. So another nice player that the Lady Boss picked up in the portal, and I think she's also going to be a major part in this team too, along with the veterans. So only 3 in the transfer portal, but that's actually kind of normal compared to some of the other teams in the SEC. I was kind of looking at during my research. It seemed like usually 3 was kind of the max as far as the transfer portal goes for women's basketball. All right, so let's talk about the freshmen coming in. And to me, this is the core of Kim Caldwell's team going forward. And this is not a bash at Talisha Cooper or Z Spearman or even, a Janai Barker, but this is the future of Lady Vols basketball. This is the start of, in my opinion, the real Kim Caldwell era. Like with Pat Summitt, Pat Summitt had many different eras, but these freshmen coming in is going to be Kim Caldwell, Shamika Holtzclaw, Tamika Ketchens, Samika Randall, and or a Candace Parker, whoever. Throw your favorite Lady Vol in there. But this is starting this brand. This is really starting the Kim Caldwell era, in my opinion. So let's start with the Paldo twins, Mia and Maya Paldo from Patterson, New Jersey. Mia is going to wear number 13. Maya is going to wear number 12. They're identical twins. So thankfully they have different numbers to kind of tell them apart. Although I guess they could swap jerseys and really, never mind. Anyway, so I'm excited about them. 4 borderline 5-star players. They're only 5'6", but I say once they really get going, they will get acclimated to the strength and conditioning and will develop nicely in their game. Others, Jada Silva from Vero Beach, Florida, also comes aboard. I'm excited to see her play. She's around 6 foot guard. Denia Prowl played at IMG Academy down in Florida. She's by way of Toronto, Canada. She's like 6'2", a guard herself. And then the one I'm probably the most familiar with due to living here in East Tennessee is Lauren Hurst. Played at Cleveland High School in Cleveland, Tennessee. Her brother, Grant Hurst, is a current member of the men's basketball team. And Grant and Lauren are the first brother-sister Tennessee basketball players to play at the same time. You did have the Anasiki siblings that played, but they played in 2 different times in their playing career. But for the first time, I believe, we have a brother-sister siblings that is playing on both Tennessee basketball teams. So kind of history there in itself. And I mentioned in the men's video, but the Hursts have another sister that plays volleyball at South Alabama. Lauren Hurst also is a 2-time Gatorade Volleyball Player of the Year when she played at high school volleyball down in Cleveland. And she was also recruited to Tennessee to play volleyball, but her main focus is basketball. So that's kind of a look at the new players. Like I said, the Paldo twins, Silva, Prowl, and Hurst. I mean, I mean, right there, that's your starting five, basically. Maybe next year, I guess. I don't know. I mean, there's anything can happen. I'm not trying to say this is it, but this is definitely the core of the start of the Kim Caldwell era. And this is not, once again, not bashing last year's team or this year's team, but this is it right here. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the schedule for the Lady Vols. Now, I'm not going to go through every game and every preview, but I want to hit some of the bigger games and some of the non-conference games that I've are pretty intriguing to see. And so we'll start right here with the season opener on November the 4th in Greensboro, as the Lady Vols will take on NC State. This is a pretty big opener right here. Normally, you don't play a Power Four opponent like start of the season, but the Lady Vols are, and they're going on the road. Although it's a neutral site game, but there's going to be quite a few NC State fans in Greensboro. Of course, Lady Vol Nation's going to travel well too, but should be a pretty intriguing game. I believe this is on a Tuesday night on ESPN2, and it's like a 4:00 game if I'm not mistaken. So pretty big opener to start the Lady Vol season, playing a high quality opponent with NC State. All right, so 11. Actually, I got two 11-9s on here. That's let's see here. Okay, edit something really quick here. I had Belmont on 11-9 and UT Martin 11-9. This is correct. So 11-9, the Pat Summitt Heritage Classic, as the Lady Vols will take on UT Martin, of course, honoring the greatest coach of all time, Pat Summitt, former coach at the University of Tennessee for many years. And then, of course, Pat Summitt played at UT Martin. So nice little tribute for Pat Summitt. Should be a fun night. I'm sure you'll probably have a lot of Lady VFLs possibly at this game too. So pretty cool little game here. And also, this is we'll see Destiny Wells return back to Thompson-Boling Arena in her return. 11-13 taking on Belmont. This will be Avery Strickland's return back to Tennessee. So, yeah, and Belmont, the reason I put this in here, this is an interesting game. I think the Lady Vols will probably be a heavy favorite, but, man, Belmont is a team that Lady Vols shouldn't sleep on. I think this can be a pretty intriguing game. It's going to be a fun matchup. Belmont's always had a team that's kind of gave the Lady Vols fits over the years, but, it's kind of a different era. But we'll see what happens. Should be fun. All right, so now we start really the meat of the schedule here. 11:30, going to Los Angeles to take on UCLA. Final Four team from last year, as I mentioned, the Lady Vols are going to play all four teams that was in the Final Four last year. We start with UCLA. Lauren Betts is back for the Bruins. She'll definitely be preseason player of the year and probably going to win it again. Huge game for the Lady Vols. Huge game for Kim Caldwell to really figure out at the early on the season kind of where they stack up from a national level. We really talk about the Lady Vols stepping up to a status level. Well, here you go, right here. You get to test it out quite a bit early on, taking on UCLA preseason #1 team. All right, 12-3. Lady Vols will stay on the West Coast for the SEC ACC Challenge. Yes, Stanford is an ACC school. So taking on a school that Lady Vols are very familiar with, kind of an underrated Lady Vols rivalry. Lady Vols have had many different ones over the years, whether it's UConn, LSU, South Carolina, Texas. Stanford's kind of in that same category too. Both programs had legendary coaches in their program, and kind of a new chapter. should be a lot of fun. Like I said, finishing out this California swing here for the Lady Vols. All right, so we jump right before Christmas, 12/20. Lady Vols will head to Brooklyn for the Shark Beauty Women's Champions Classic to take on Louisville. Louisville's going to be a top 15, top 20 team all season. Should be, once again, kind of like UCLA. Where does Lady Vols kind of rank as far as some of these top 25 elite teams go? Trying to pick up some wins and build that resume up. I mean, I think the Lady Vols will get some of these wins against these teams we kind of previewed, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this roster is stacked up compared to some of the elite teams in women's basketball. All right, so now we jump into SEC play, although we do have one more non-conference game. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way, and then we'll jump into SEC play. February 1st at UConn. We mentioned last year the Lady Vols, huge win, knocking off UConn. They had Paige Buckets on that team last year. Now she's in the WNBA. Obviously Gino and the Lady Huskies are going to try to get revenge on our Lady Vols. Can Kim Caldwell make it 2 years in a row, or is it, still going to be kind of a back and forth game, or back and forth rivalry, if you will? Once again, UConn made the Final Four last year. I say there will be another series contender to make it, but hey, it'd be nice to get 2 wins in a row over them. All right, so now we'll jump into SEC play. I'm not expecting this to be much of a game, but this is the SEC opener on January 1st, New Year's Day. Ring in 2026 with your Lady Vols at home taking on the Florida Gators. And I kind of like the way this SEC schedule is kind of worked out. I don't know if it's just coincidence or I don't remember them doing it last year, but the start of the SEC women's basketball season runs from January 1st through March 1st. So 2 months of, conference play. I mean, I know you get UConn on February 1st, sandwiched in between those months, but I like it, for 2 straight months. And I guess the guys do technically do that, but it's kind of easier to remember January 1st through March 1st. You have SEC play and you open up with the Florida Gators. All right, so now we'll jump into January 22nd, taking on the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky preseason, I think, tied for 24th, if I'm not mistaken. So, Kentucky trying to get back to near the top of the SEC. They haven't really reached that pinnacle since Ryan Howard's been gone. That's been, 2-3 years there. But, for Kentucky, they're going to try. They picked up a nice 5-star player in Kaylin Carroll. So we'll see if, how they kind of utilize her, how much playing time they're going to use, or they're just kind of rely on more of their veterans. But that game's at home on January 22nd. January 26th, one of the teams on the rise in the SEC, Coach Yo's Ole Miss Rebels. Ole Miss ended up picking up a big-time player in the transfer portal from Ohio State and Cody McMahon. Like I said, this is definitely Coach Yo's best team she's had. You got to go to Oxford. Probably going to be kind of a hostile environment playing down there. It feels like this Ole Miss fan base is now kind of getting behind Coach Yo. I know it took some time to kind of invest in women's basketball, but I think it's starting to pay off a little bit. But should be a fun matchup going down there. All right, so now we'll jump into February. February the 8th, taking on South Carolina, Dawn Staley's group. Another Final Four team from last year. Should have mentioned in the UConn preview, they were also in the Final Four last year. I mentioned in the video that Lady Vols tried to pick up a player in the transfer portal. Didn't work out. South Carolina picked it up, and that is former Florida State, probably the best women's basketball player came through Florida State, and Tanaya Latson. Latson had a great run at Florida State. Lady Vols tried to take a shot at her. to come to Knoxville. Didn't work out. She ended up with Don Staley's group. She is going to be a dangerous player to contain throughout this game. End up end up getting a freshman in Makia McDowell. Of course, South Carolina is going to pick up big time recruits with Don Staley and NIL and all that stuff. So we'll see what happens when we go down there. All right. Probably the most anticipated game on the schedule for me. Not for, not for, this is going to be a great game or whatever, but just the anticipation. Kelly Harper's return, February the 12th, when Missouri comes to Thompson-Boling Arena. I am going to just say I think the Lady Vols crowd will give her a nice ovation. She is a Lady Vol for life, but it's definitely going to be very interesting to see kind of the atmosphere of this game. Like I said, I think she'll get cheered. I don't think she'll get booed or nothing, but it's definitely going to be an emotional game, more for her than probably for the Lady Vols. But I'm definitely kind of intrigued just to see the mood and the atmosphere and just kind of her coming back. Kind of reminiscent of when Bruce Pearl came back when first time he was the head coach at Auburn back to Knoxville, which he kind of got more of a mixed reaction. I don't think Kelly will get a mixed reaction. But I'm intrigued to see how, like I said, the mood and the atmosphere is going to be throughout that game. All right, 2:15, huge matchup at home. I would say the biggest home game of the season, as the Texas Longhorns come into town, SEC preseason favorites, the team that the Lady Vols got knocked out of the Sweet 16. Obviously, they're going for revenge. I think this is going to be very reminiscent of the UConn game last year, where there's going to be a lot of hype. There's going to be a lot of anticipation, excitement, especially if the Lady Vols are, winning and probably near Texas as far as SEC standings go, or trying to pick up a big marquee win right before March Madness. For Texas, Madison Booker, Rory Hardman returns back for Texas. And, I know the Lady Vols would love to get revenge. I know Kim Caldwell would love to get the revenge. We'll see if it happens on that day after Valentine's Day. All right, 2:22, Oklahoma going to Norman. Reagan Beers returns back for Oklahoma. This is a top 10 team in women's basketball. They also picked up a big-time player, 5-star in Aaliyah Chavez. So we'll see if she gets to play this year. This is going to be a very tough game. I mean, this kind of starts a second of back-to-back road games that the Lady Vols are going to face this season. Early February, you got to go to UConn and then South Carolina. And then at the end of the month, you got to go to Oklahoma. And then the next team we're about to preview, LSU. Like I said, we'll see where Oklahoma still stacks by this point. I'm sure they'll probably still be in the top 25, probably even top 10 if they got a lot of anticipation. But February is going to be tough for Kim Caldwell's group, but this is where I think she's going to put a lot of demand on her team in a good way to try to play to these elite levels. And then 2:26, Kim Mulkey's LSU Tigers. Flau'jae Johnson's back for LSU. Michaela Williams. They also have 3 5-star players in their recruiting class. So another tough game, another tough matchup. And I really wish we had a home and home with LSU or even South Carolina. We only get them one time, and it's on the road. I mean, really the only big top 10 matchup we have as far as SEC opponents go is Texas. I know we got a home and home with Mississippi State, but they've kind of slipped over the last couple of years. So, we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, back-to-back road games, and it's going to be kind of tough. And we finally wrap up March the 1st, season finale, Another program on the rise in the SEC and Vanderbilt. Caleb Banks back for Vandy. And like I said, by then, obviously, we'll know where we are as far as the SEC standings go. But like I said, this wraps up a 2-month gauntlet these Lady Vols are going to run through, especially taking on 3 of the 4 teams from the Final Four last year, along with some, top 25 teams in the SEC. And obviously, we'll see what kind of team this will be going into the SEC tournament in Greenville, South Carolina, back there once again, and then, of course, the NCAA tournament. But that's kind of a brief look at the schedule. Obviously, the full schedule is available at utsports.com. But like I said, I'm excited to see what Kim Caldwell is going to do. I think this really starts her era of Lady Vols basketball. Last year was that transitional period, and then her pregnancy and her delivery, and she only missed 1 game last year and came back. And I mean, like her first year kind of felt like 2 or 3 years just of everything constantly changing. But it's exciting to see. I think she is the right fit at this moment for Lady Vols basketball to take them to the top. And we've talked about all across our Vol Society platforms of just how all these programs across campus are just playing at high levels or getting close to it. And I think Lady Vols basketball is getting back on the rise. I think the crowds are going to be alive like from yesteryear. I think you're going to see more people going out for these Lady Vol games. I'm excited to see these young players, these young freshmen kind of developing into their own game and building a fan base. And like I said, to bring some excitement. And like I said, women's basketball has definitely been on this huge renaissance in the last couple of years, starting with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, and it kind of continued on last year, even with Clark and Reese in the WNBA. I felt like with Betts and even a Reagan Beers and of course Paige Euchers from last year. I'm excited to kind of see who's going to be that next wave of household name superstars in women's basketball. And who knows, maybe it could be someone from the Lady Vols. Could we find our next Candace Parker or Shamika Holtzclaw or Tamika Catchings on this team? Only time will tell. And I'm excited to bring this video to you. I hope you enjoy it, and look forward to some Lady Vols basketball. So we'll wrap it up and say thank you very much for watching this Lady Vols preview, and good luck to our Lady Vols, and hope to catch you next time. This is David Morrison. God bless each and every one of you, and go Lady Vols.